There is a car you are not allowed to buy, not because it is unsafe, not because it fails emission standards, not because it cannot pass a crash test. You are not allowed to buy it because the United States government has placed a 100% tax on it, a tax so large that it doubles the sticker price before the car reaches a single American showroom. Stay with me. I'm Tyler Williams. Most people know me as Motor Grease Monkey. 15 years in garages working on cars people trust and cars people regret buying. And today we're talking about why the government is trying to keep Chinese cars out of the US, and the real reason behind it. That car is the BYD Seagull. It costs $10,000 in China. It is a fully electric vehicle with modern safety features, a real-world range of over 190 miles, and build quality that automotive engineers who have driven it describe as genuinely competitive with anything in its class. At $10,000, it would be the most affordable new electric vehicle ever sold on American soil. By a margin of over $15,000. It would make electric vehicle ownership accessible to tens of millions of American families who currently cannot afford one. And the United States government, under both the Sleepy Joe administration and the Trump administration, two governments that agree on almost nothing, has moved in complete bipartisan lockstep to make absolutely certain it never arrives. The official reason is national security. The real reason is $475 billion. That is the annual value of the American automotive import market. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, it is the number that explains why two presidents from opposite parties both looked at the fastest growing car company on the planet, a company that outsold Tesla globally in 2024, a company that grew its revenue by 29% in a single year to $107 billion, a company building electric vehicles that cost less than a monthly car payment in America, and both decided the correct response was to build a wall around it tall enough that no American driver could ever get close enough to compare the price tags. Today we are going to show you exactly what China built, exactly how fast they built it, exactly why Washington is terrified of it, and exactly what American drivers are being prevented from accessing, while the government figures out what to do about a problem it cannot solve with a tariff. First, understand what China actually built. 5 years ago, Chinese cars were a punchline. Economist Sue Helper, who has spent decades tracking global auto manufacturing, described seeing BYD vehicles a few years back as simply terrible. That assessment is now obsolete, in a way that should alarm every executive at Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis simultaneously. In 2024, BYD sold 4.27 million vehicles globally. That is a 41% increase in a single year. To put that number in context, Ford sold approximately 4 million vehicles globally in the same period. BYD, a company that did not produce a single passenger car until 2005, has pulled level with Ford in total global volume in less than 2 decades. And BYD's trajectory is not flattening. BYD's 2024 revenue reached $107 billion, outperforming Tesla's $97.69 billion for the first time. BYD's R&D investment in 2024 stood at $7.5 billion, a 36% year-on-year increase, exceeding its own net profit. A company spending more on research than it earns in profit is not a company optimizing for today. It is a company building the next decade. While its competitors are still reading last quarter's earnings report, the price gap is the number that changes the conversation entirely. Between 2022 and 2025, BYD slashed the sticker price of its Seal sedan from $30,198 to $24,190, while the comparable Tesla Model 3 barely moved, dropping just $221 over the same period. The BYD Seagull, the entry-level model the US government is most determined to keep out, costs $10,000 in China. American automotive engineers who have driven it in Detroit describe its build quality as genuinely competitive with anything in its class. And this price advantage is not primarily built on government subsidies, as the American political narrative insists. A February 2026 Rhodium Group analysis found that Chinese state subsidies account for just 5% of BYD's $4,700 per vehicle cost advantage over Tesla. The rest comes from vertical integration, scale, cheaper engineering talent, and lower manufacturing overhead. Structural advantages that a tariff cannot eliminate. That is the part that neither the Sleepy Joe White House nor the Trump White House wants to say out loud. The tariff can keep the car off American soil. It cannot close the cost gap that produced the car in the first place. Now understand what the US government actually did, and when. In 2018, the Trump administration's first term imposed tariffs on Chinese vehicles. as part of a broad Section 301 trade action. Those tariffs sat at 27.5% on passenger vehicles, high enough to make Chinese cars uncompetitive, not high enough to make headlines. For several years that rate held. Chinese automakers were blocked but not panicked. They were watching the American market, building their technology, and waiting. Then BYD's growth figures started arriving. By 2024, BYD held almost 25% of the global new energy vehicle market, the largest share of any single manufacturer on the planet. The Seagull launched. European markets began absorbing Chinese EVs in volume. The threat assessment in Washington changed overnight. In May 2024, the Sleepy Joe administration quadrupled tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, from 25% to 100%, in a move designed to prevent affordable Chinese-made vehicles from entering the U.S. market. 100%. Not a trade adjustment. Not a negotiating position. A wall. A car that costs $10,000 in Shanghai now costs $20,000 in import taxes alone, before a single cent of shipping, compliance, or dealer margin is added. The $10,000 Seagull becomes a $30,000 Seagull by the time it clears U.S. customs. The price advantage that makes it dangerous to American automakers has been arithmetically erased by government decree. Starting in 2027, the U.S. will also ban the sale of any Chinese-made connected vehicle hardware or software on alleged national security grounds, targeting the data exchange systems commonly found in Chinese EVs. The justification is that Chinese vehicles equipped with cameras, sensors, and cellular connections could function as data collection devices on American soil. That concern is not entirely without merit, but it is worth noting that the same concern applies to every smartphone manufactured in China that 300 million Americans carry in their pockets every day, and those have not been banned. The connected vehicle ban is a national security argument, deployed at a moment of extreme economic convenience for the American automotive industry. And the timing is not a coincidence. The Trump administration subsequently added further tariff layers. From January to April 2025, the overall average effective U.S. tariff rate rose from 2.5% to an estimated 27%, the highest level in over a century. On Chinese electric vehicles specifically, the cumulative tariff burden reached levels that make importation commercially impossible for any manufacturer trying to sell at a price American consumers would actually pay. Now understand who the tariff is actually protecting and who is paying for it. The official framing from both administrations is that the tariffs protect American workers and American manufacturing. That framing is worth testing against the numbers. In 2024, Americans bought approximately 16 million cars, SUVs, and light trucks. 50% of these vehicles were imports. Of the other 8 million assembled in America, the average domestic content is estimated at only 40 to 50%. Of the 16 million cars bought by Americans, only 25% of the vehicle content can be categorized as made in America. The American automotive industry the tariff claims to protect is already, by the government's own calculations, 75% imported content. The tariff is not protecting a thriving domestic manufacturing base. It is protecting the profit margins of companies that have spent 30 years offshoring their supply chains and are now asking the government to lock the door behind them. The companies most directly protected are Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, three manufacturers whose combined market valuation has declined relative to both Toyota and BYD over the past decade, whose reliability rankings consistently sit at the bottom of every independent consumer survey, and whose response to the Chinese EV threat has been primarily political rather than engineering-based. Rather than building a $10,000 electric vehicle to compete with the Seagull on merit, the American industry lobbied for a 100% tariff to make the Seagull artificially unaffordable. Rather than matching BYD's $7.5 billion annual R&D investment, they sought regulatory protection. The tariff is not an industrial policy. It is a competitive retreat disguised as patriotism. The Tax Foundation estimates that Trump's tariff regime amounts to an average tax increase per U.S. household of $1,500 in 2026. The American driver who cannot afford a $40,000 domestic EV and is being prevented from accessing a $10,000 Chinese one is not being protected by these tariffs. They are paying for them every month in the form of a car payment on a vehicle that costs 3 to 4 times what the banned alternative would have cost, financed over 84 months at an interest rate the dealership selected for them. Here is what this means in real terms for the American driver right now. The rest of the world is driving Chinese electric vehicles. Around 60% of all EVs sold in Brazil in 2024 were BYD models. BYD became the top-selling car brand in Singapore in 2025, representing 21.2% of all new car registrations. In the United Kingdom, BYD outsold Tesla for the first time, on a monthly basis in January 2025. In Thailand, Indonesia, Australia, and across Southeast Asia, Chinese electric vehicles are entering markets at price points that domestic manufacturers cannot match, and at quality levels that are no longer easy to dismiss. In the United States, none of this is happening because of a 100% tariff, because Ford's lobbying budget is larger than BYD's American marketing department. The government will tell you this is about national security. It will tell you this is about protecting American jobs. It will tell you this is about leveling the playing field against Chinese subsidies that the Rhodium Group has now quantified at 5% of the cost advantage. What it will not tell you is that the American family paying $847 per month on a new vehicle loan, the current national average according to Experian, is paying that number in part because the government decided that Ford and GM's market share matters more than their ability to access the most competitive vehicle the global market has ever produced at the price point they can actually afford. The $10,000 electric car exists. It works. Engineers who have driven it say so. The reason it is not in your driveway is not technology. It is not safety. It is not national security. It is a 100% tariff. 2 administrations of bipartisan political will, and $475 billion in annual import revenue that the American automotive establishment has decided is too large to compete for honestly. Subscribe and share it right now.